Hello, everyone, and welcome to the press conference for Looper. Just a few points before we begin. There will be no flash photographer during the press conference. As the talent enters the room, photos may be taken from your seats, but once the press conference begins, only the 6 accredited photo agencies will be allowed to take photographs. TIFF will make the photos available on the media website within 24 hours. Volunteers with microphones will be moving around the room to handle questions, and when you ask your question, please remember to identify yourself and your media outlet. Everyone, please make sure your cell phones are turned off. The press conference will be streamed live at tiff.net. Our moderator for this session is Eric Kohanek, and it's now my great pleasure to welcome the director and the cast of the film Looper. Thanks very much.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the first press conference of the 2012 Toronto International Film Festival. With us today is the two main stars and actor and writer and director of Looper, the opening night film at TIFF 2012. Seated next to me is Ryan Johnson, who wrote and directed the film. Next to Ryan is Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays the young Joseph Simmons, the mob hitman who's at the core of the movie. And last but certainly not least, Bruce Willis, who plays the older version of Joseph in the movie. We've got a couple of volunteers with microphones, so feel free to stick up your hand if you have any questions. I'll just get things going until we get the mic down here in the front. Ryan, maybe you can start off by telling us what it feels like and how you felt when you got the news that this would be the opening film at the film festival.
I was really hello, good morning. Hello, everybody. I was stunned and thrilled, and I'm just so excited to. I mean, we were here a few years ago with our film, The Brothers Bloom, but to be given the honor of opening this festival, yeah, it's a real thrill.
Okay, we got a question right down front, Bruce.
Yes. Good morning, Bruce Kirkland, Toronto Sun. A question for Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis. This is a smart thriller. It's a mainstream movie. It's not dumb as a bag of rocks. Both of you have been in that kind of movie before. I think of the first Die Hard, great action movie, smart, good characters. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, obviously you were in The Dark Knight Rises this summer. Ditto. Talk about starring in a movie where you have those kind of dual elements, which sometimes are mutually exclusive in Hollywood.
The dual elements of
intelligence and action thriller aspects.
Go right.
You want me to go first? I mean, that's what I want out of going to the movies. I want a fun time, but I also want something to talk about when it's over. I don't want to just be walking out of the cinema and be like, okay, cool, what are we going to eat? You know, I like to have something to have a conversation about, something to think about, something maybe I'll keep thinking about for a while. And Looper's really got both of those sides.
It's a really smart script. It was really smart, and it just makes you want to do it. I mean, I don't know if you think about. I didn't really compare it to anything else. I mean, it's a science fiction film, and it's a really great science fiction film. And the only thing that I can compare it to is that I've been in other films that have science fiction background, but this is not like anything else. It's very exciting to be here, very exciting to be able to talk about it and talk about Looper.
Ryan, maybe you can pick up from that. How did you go about the casting? I know you and Joe worked together before in your previous film. Who came first?
Well, Joe Joe came first. No offense. Joe and I, we met when we made the first film that I did, Brick, nearly 10 years ago now. And we met then, and we stayed close friends since then. And we had just been wanting to work together, and so I actually wrote the part with Joe in mind. And then Bruce was the first part that we cast in it, and I was just so thrilled and excited that Bruce was interested in doing the movie for a lot of reasons. He's a tremendous actor, first of all, and then just get the fact that you are Bruce Willis. There is that fact also. So I was thrilled, but then we had to deal with the fact that these two look nothing alike. So so that then led to a whole process of involving makeup and Joe's performance to kind of pull that off.
Well, great. We have a question down here.
Yeah, John Semley from Toronto Life magazine. This is for everyone, but mostly Ryan, I suppose. I found the movie really interesting in part because it's so ambivalent about the mechanics of time travel. Like, Bruce has the scene where he's like, I don't want to talk about this time travel shit, we'll be here all day. Did you find this sort of, that a lot of time travel movies especially, and sci-fi movies in general, kind of get bogged down in these mechanics at the expense of story or character?
Well, that's always the danger with any complicated plot thing, but especially with time travel, partly because it's so much fun. The temptation is there as a writer to want to explain all of it and really delve into it. And there are films that do that and get away with it, like a film like Primer, for example, which is a great science fiction movie, and it really delves into all those things. But with this was not that. Our model was very much more like the first Terminator, just in terms of time travel setting up a situation and then it really being about the characters and where you get hit with. The end of the movie is not so much a puzzle resolving as hopefully an emotional place that we get to. So yeah, that's always the danger with it, and just kind of simplifying it and clearing away the weeds and not getting bogged down in exposition was the task.
A question over here.
This is Linda from Fairchild TV of Toronto. Welcome to Toronto. This question is for Joseph and Bruce. It's about time traveling. If there is a period of time that both of you could choose to travel, you have a choice. When would you like to go? Thank you.
Joseph. Me first. I'd like to see the future. I consider myself an optimist, as dire as things sometimes seem. I believe we're going to pull it out, and I want to see what it looks like.
Okay, we have a question back there.
All right, my name is Laura Hernandez from W Radio Latin America. And after the Colorado massacre, of course, there were a lot of commentary about what is going to happen with like action movies, violent movies, shooting, all this thing that is involved. How do you take this kind of criticism? How do you see these reactions from the media and from the people in general who thought that maybe violent movies can affect kids or teenagers?
Well, Looper is a movie that at its heart is about violence, and that's, for me, that's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable with the violence that is in the movie. There is quite a lot of violence in it, and but in its bones, it's about the self-perpetuating loop that occurs when the solution to a problem is let's find the right person and kill them. And it's not just something that we glossed over in terms of a theme, it's something that is really at the heart of this film. And for me, I think that's what films that can actually deal with violence and take a look at violence, a hard look at why violence exists. And Looper is on the light side of those films, but I think that's a way that, you know, I think it's essential to have movies like that, to have stories in our culture that address that. And I think that that's one of the things that film is really good at, is taking some of the darker stuff that we would prefer not to look at and really taking a mirror and shining it back on us. So for that, I mean, that's kind of my take on violence in this film specifically.
Bruce, Joe, you want to weigh in on that at all?
I think violence is one of the hard, bad things that exist in the world. It's not just in films, it exists everywhere. And to pick one thing out and say, well, shouldn't have violence in films, or we shouldn't make violence a part of a film, would be like taking any other emotion out of it. It's a very emotional film. I don't think we ever I don't think I ever heard you say this is a science fiction film and we have to really focus on the science fiction. It was a very emotional process and a very emotional day-to-day activity of just trying to make it look real and trying to deal with the idea that when I look at Joe, that it's really me, and trying to make that be honest and be believable. It was just as hard as anything. I don't know if I answered your question.
Hi, gentlemen. Andrea Case, CTV News Toronto. If you could go back or forward to yourself, over here, Mr. Willis.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
if you could go back in
yeah.
the past or into the future to yourself, what advice would you give yourself? Not that you'd want to kill yourself, but what advice would you give yourself?
I would remind myself every couple minutes not to take myself seriously. not to take hardly anything seriously. That it goes so fast that there's really no time to. All the things that I worried about like an hour ago, overall, I've completely forgotten. So I would remind myself that.
Yeah, I think I might just tell my younger self to relax a little bit.
How much younger?
Well, like, you know, an hour ago.
Hour goes good. Hour goes good.
Question down front here. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ernesto Garrata. I come from Chile and I speak Spanish, so my English sucks, so excuse me. I just want to know, Mr. Willis, Mr. Joseph, what was the feeling during the set sharing together? I mean, how do you do to be Bruce Willis? I mean, it was difficult, the makeup, and you as judge. Was Joseph a good Bruce Willis? Thank you.
Yes, very good. Very good, Bruce Willis.
Thank you. Well, for me, it was, you know, I studied his movies, and I would take the audio from some of his movies and put them on my iPod so I could listen to them. And Bruce actually recorded himself doing some of my monologues and sent me the tape so that I could listen to that. And that was all really useful. But I think the most important thing for me was just getting to know him, you know, hanging out, you know, having dinner, talking about whatever. That was I think where I really learned what I wanted to do with the character.
And Mr. Do you think
Hello?
It seems like an impossible task to try to act with someone that is supposed to be you, supposed to be the younger you. And at some point, you have to let go of it and just believe that you're in the story, that we're part of the story, that science fiction films especially are like magic tricks. And it kind of fools you. And when I saw the film, I was so surprised that the magic trick we were trying to do works. And because it's so hard to look at someone else and go, oh yeah, that's the younger me. That's you just have to believe it. You have to go with the magic trick part of it.
We have a question back there.
Yeah, Nadège Puljac from the French news agency AFP. Mr. Ryan Johnson, I'd like to know why you think that the things will be better in China than in France in another 30 years.
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. And there was, what she's referring to, there was a sequence in the film that is set in China that was originally set in Paris. And it's not so much that I think China will be better than Paris. It's more that we didn't have the budget to go to Paris. And so we were faced with faking Paris in New Orleans, which I'm sure you can appreciate would not have been terrific. So, you know, you paste in the Eiffel Tower on the background, and it's that sort of thing. And our Chinese distributor stepped up and said, if that sequence is set in China, we can be a co-production. You can actually come to Shanghai and film those scenes. So it was really and then once that happened, I was like, okay, it makes sense for that sequence to be set in China. and we got the opportunity to actually be shooting in Shanghai as opposed to shooting in the French Quarter with a green screen up. So that was really what led to the decision. Yeah.
There was one line in the script where Bruce's version of Joe tells the younger Joe not to bother with French, to learn Chinese instead because he comes from the future. Did that come out of that too, or can you talk a bit about your vision of the future in the film, and too, also the lawlessness that you portray in the film?
Yeah, that line would definitely. I mean, that joke kind of like came after the whole change.
Right.
But yeah, the world of the film, it's very much, it's near future, so it's kind of a very grounded future, and all the elements we tried to make feel very believable. There's nothing in this film that feels too far future. And it's also a world where the middle has kind of gone away, the middle class. It's all either people with money in the clubs or destitution on the streets. And for me, that was really a function of driving the story. And these characters are all characters who are doing everything they can to hold on to their little piece of the pie. It made sense to put them in this world where the reason they're doing that is because there's nowhere to really go to except the bottom if you lose that. So it was really a function of that.
Question over here.
I have to admit, this question's for Ryan. I felt that there was elements of Damon meets Rio Bravo. I mean, can you talk a little bit about some of your cinematic influences putting the movie together?
I like that. That's going on the poster. I like that. Yeah, especially in that back half, it takes a turn into Western territory. There's a little bit of Shane in there. There's a lot of witness in there. I love when I'm approaching something in a genre. It feels really good to me to look for inspiration outside of that genre. That's just a way of kind of infusing new blood and kind of keeping it fresh for myself. So there are definitely plenty of Western aspects in that back half where it ends up going. And it's emotionally, in terms of the scope of where it goes, it feels more in line with what you're saying. And the horror elements also, it's fun to see how much stuff you can mix into the soup and still have it feel all of a piece.
Question in the back.
Hi, Phoebe Ho from Xinhua News. I have a question for Ryan. So, this is a China-U.S. co-production. So what kind of efforts were made to kind of appeal to both the Western and Asian audience?
Well, it was fantastic getting to go over there and shoot. I wouldn't say that we catered anything specifically to appeal to Western or Asian or East or West or whoever. We just kind of tried to tell the story. And for the story, being in China and having this kind of huge visual scope for that one specific sequence worked really, really well. And I hope Chinese audiences like it the same way that I hope American audiences like it.
We have a question back here. Right there.
Is it? Oh, here.
Go ahead.
Hi, Tina Christensen, Denmark. Bruce, this question is for you. If you could travel back in your own movie history and choose a special moment, what would that moment be in your own career?
Back in time? It would have to be back in time? Well, that's a good question. I don't know what the answer is to it. I don't know if I would ever go back in time. I mean, yeah, if I'd had to, if you said go, you have to go back in time now and go do something, I would probably try and find a way to weasel out of it and not do it. But I'll answer your question. I would go back in time and make more mistakes earlier than I already made. I made a lot of mistakes early in my life. But if I had made more of them, I would have got to the answer to those mistakes earlier. And now I'm so confused by my own answer. that it's a good question, though. It really is a good question.
A special movie like from Die Hard or something, like a special scene.
Because I want to get through the anxiety of making a mistake as fast as I possibly can. If I make a mistake, or if I do something rude, or if I hurt someone's feelings, or if I do anything that I consider a mistake, I want to try and correct that and make it okay as fast as I possibly can. That may just be me. I have a lot of anxiety about making mistakes and hurting people's feelings, so there were things that I did as a brash kid that I wasn't paying any attention to, whose feelings I hurt. You know what I'm saying, don't you? You know what I mean? I want to not hurt people anymore.
Question right beside there.
Hello. Juan Carlos Garcia from Mexico City. This is for Joseph and Bruce. You were talking about the past right now, but in the future, how do you see yourself in the future, maybe 10 years or 20 years from now, and doing what?
Man, I'm so lucky and grateful to get to do what I'm doing right now. I'm getting to work on projects that I am truly inspired by. I'm getting to work with people that I really care about and connect with, and I can only hope that I get to keep doing it as long as I can.
I have an 18-year-old daughter that that decided to take a year off before she went to college, and every day she says, "Well, when I go to college next year," and I have to remind myself when I hear her say that, is that we don't have next year or tomorrow, we just have what we're doing right now. That anything could happen to all of us right now, and I'm not suggesting that anything is going to happen to us right now, but it could. So you can't count on anything except just the next few minutes. So let's see if everything goes okay in the next couple of minutes. And let's see.
Question back there.
Hi, my name is Liam, from Empire Movies. Joseph, you said you wanted to go to the future because you thought you're optimistic about the future. But so many movies about the future portray a world that's so bleak, like you say, Terminator, this movie, or Bruce, you were in 12 Monkeys. That was. I'm wondering what it is about movies that want to show a future that's so terrible.
Well, I think it's something Ryan was just mentioning. Movies can serve as a great warning and a mirror, a reflection. I think I like when a movie has something to say like that and can point out certain things that maybe we don't notice every day about our worlds or about ourselves, and I think that's kind of the purpose of telling stories, and it's something we've always done as human beings is tell stories that, you know, and whether the story is about the future or it's a history story about the past, it's all in service of learning more about ourselves right now, and you know, I think every really good movie does that.
Question over here.
Hi, it's Michael from ctv.ca. This question is for all three of you, I guess. The film kind of shows a lot of really cool future devices like the motorcycles and the eye drops and the cell phones and stuff. I'm just curious, is there any aspect in particular that you would like to see become a real product in your lifetimes?
Hoverboards. Hoverboards. Come on, hoverboards.
Hoverboard's good.
Yeah? Comment?
We'll talk a bit about some of the devices you came up with were actually comical, like the solar panels hooked up to the fuel tanks.
Sure. Well, now when I watch a sci-fi movie, especially one like ours that doesn't have a huge budget, the first thing I look at is the cars and how they deal with the cars. Because when you go in the future, you realize that's like the big expensive thing you can't get around, that you have to figure out what your approach is going to be. And our approach was, we said, okay, let's have it be, everything is kind of fallen apart, so the cars in our world are sort of like the the big American cars and the Yank tanks in Cuba, where they've had cars from like 2010 that have had to kind of make it through like 30 years. And so they're retrofitted with other engines, and they've layered, solar panels on the top. And so it's all just, a process. So it's designed by way of thinking out kind of step by step, how do we get from A to B?
And in that process, was there a gadget that you came up with that you said, hey, this would actually be...
I like that. Do you remember when you're doing the computer and there's like a holographic 3D thing where you use the mouse, where it's not a touch screen, but it's moving your fingers in a certain way in 3D space? And that's not even future. That's something that I think exists now. It's just not mainstream. I also like the phones. Although it's very simple, they're kind of these paper-thin things that can fold into any shape that you want. And as a gadget freak, I want that.
Question over here.
Mina Reef from Global News. Movies are very much an escape for most of us in the audience. When we go into that theater and the lights dim, there's that experience. For you guys being on set so often and in different roles, does there ever come a time where you kind of lose touch of what's reality and what's a role? I'm sure part of this may be a role as well, answering questions to the press.
Answering questions is the hardest part of the job.
You can't avoid this one, though.
I'm not trying to avoid it. I just think that our job is the same thing every time. You would think that it's different because the stories are different, but why you go to the movies is the same reason that we like to make movies, because it's all about human emotion, and it's all about, and violence is a human emotion, and what you want and what your goals are and why you try so hard to, why I tried so hard to stop Joe from doing what he did as me, as a younger me, happens in every film. It's what you want and what you want to get and why you're doing what you want to do and why you want to stop somebody from hurting someone, or why you're trying to hurt someone in order to get your wife back, is just human emotion. And everybody here does things all the time that are driven by what you want to do and what your goals are.
So you basically get to live that sense of escape all the time and get paid for it.
Yeah, I don't ever feel like I'm escaping it to anywhere. I feel like that our job is to be as honest as we can in the sometimes strange circumstances of science fiction.
Joseph?
Well, I get the desire to escape in a movie, and it is, I guess, sometimes that's fun. But for me, usually when I sit down to watch a movie, it's not that I'm trying to get away from something. I'm usually more looking for something, whatever it is that I'm wondering about that day, or that's bothering me that day, or that's inspiring me that day. Usually the movie I choose to watch is somehow connected to that, and I'm looking for some kind of kernel to connect to. I think that's more what I look for in a movie, is a connection more than an escape.
Question right down front here.
Hi, I'm Nafisa from the Netherlands for Pathé.nl. Ryan, what inspired you to write this film?
Well, I wrote the idea for it a long time ago. I wrote it as a short film that I never ended up making about 10 years ago. And I remember telling Joe about it when we were at Sundance with Brick. And I had been reading a lot of Philip K. Dick at the time, and so I think I was just kind of, I was kind of steeped in that moment with a lot of sci-fi. And yeah, the idea just sprung in, and really it's you know, I guess what appealed to me about it was it seemed like a way of doing what I love in science fiction, which is using a kind of twisty magic trick of a sci-fi plot, using this kind of weird magical thing of time travel to set up a very human situation. And for me, you know, like Ray Bradbury was a master of that, using an outlandish sci-fi thing to do something that just stabs you in your heart and leaves you sobbing at the end of a short story. That's what great sci-fi can aspire to, and that's what this, you know, that's in this situation. That's I saw the potential to try and do that. I guess that makes sense.
Thank you. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Question in the back.
Hi, Justine with News Talk 1010. A question for Joseph and Bruce right here. How would each of you describe the other on the set? As in, you know, was one of you the serious guy, the other the joker or whatnot?
I wouldn't say there was a serious guy and a joker per se. I don't know. I mean, they were pretty intense scenes, the ones that we do together, and we were both pretty focused.
Yes. Long emotional scenes, and we both have really clear desires and clear needs of what we want to do. It's not like I didn't understand what I wanted to do and what I had to do in order to try to save someone that I loved. And it just takes all the thinking out of it. I just found myself so seldom thinking that I have to act like I'm looking at myself. I was just in an emotional place that was much easier to manage than it is to think about the fact that Joe is me as a young guy.
Do you cut some of the tension on the set by pulling practical jokes on each other the way Clooney does in a movie or whatever? Or is
I
that
can't
never
remember any.
Nothing.
Can't remember any.
No whoopee cushion gags to take? I don't think so. No.
Okay, we have a question down here.
Hi, gentlemen. Melanie Ng with City TV. We know, Joseph, you studied Bruce. Bruce, did you study Joseph at all, and did you learn anything from your younger self?
When you see the film again, you see me looking at him just like I'm looking at you right now, and just looking right at you and trying to think what you're thinking and trying to think what you're doing. And I was this close, and we were that close the whole time, and just talking to each other, and the stakes were very high. And Ryan does a really interesting thing with the idea of science fiction. He says, here's science fiction, now forget about it. It's not really, that's not what this film's about. And there are reminders the whole way that we're in a different time situation, but it's really an emotional film, and when I saw it, I was emotionally moved by it. I wasn't expecting that to happen, just based on us, on this science fiction idea.
Ryan, can you talk a bit about the different points of view in the film, and how you film those scenes? Were they done simultaneously, or did you just set up and redo them then from the older Joe's perspective? Or?
Yeah, you mean when it kind of repeats in that one section? Yeah, I mean, just because of the limitations of production, we were in a location, we shot all those things out. And there's a little bit of that in this movie. That we don't get into Back to the Future 2 type territory, but there's a little bit, just enough to have fun with it. I guess for me, when you started asking the questions, my mind immediately leapt to moral perspective, which for me was the bigger thing in this, and that I hope is one of the pleasures of the movie. Hopefully, is a tension that you feel throughout the whole thing of who you are supposed to morally identify and who you're supposed to root for. To me, that perspective-wise, that was kind of the thing we played with most, I think.
A question back here.
Yeah, hi, Julio Rivas from EFE News. Bruce, you just mentioned that when you saw the movie, it moved you in a way that you didn't expect it. Could you tell us what made click on you? What part of the movie really moved you?
While I was shooting the film, I never really thought that I was doing anything wrong as a character. I never thought that my character does really terrible things. Bless you. Bless you. That my character does really terrible things. And I never judged myself, and I never judged the character of old Joe. I just was so caught up in those goals and what I wanted to do that I took it for granted that I had to hurt other people and hurt really innocent people. And I never thought that was a bad thing while I was doing it. And when I saw it, I was emotionally moved by how horribly wrong the things that I was doing to try to keep my wife from a different time alive. Does that make sense? No?
We have a question over here, just behind you.
Jennifer Paviero, Toronto Star. This is for Ryan and Joseph. You mentioned your early work with Brick. Ryan, I'm wondering how your working relationship has changed with Joseph since then. Are you able to read him better on set? And for Joseph, the same thing with Ryan.
Oh, I can read you like a book at this point. No, it's almost hard to gauge for me, just because I feel like it's been so many years. I feel like I've just had so much experience, just learned so much since then, and hopefully will continue to learn. But it felt the same, but just more comfortable. It felt like we were both a little bit more. I know I was much more comfortable and confident on set than I was when I was making Brick, and I feel like. But at the same time, I mean, with this one, I just learned so much from working with Joe again. You know, with Brick, it was the first time I had ever directed professional actors. I mean, I was really just jumping into. There's the old joke on set that the director is the only entry-level position on set, and it was really true on Brick, and I just got kind of a master class from Joe and really learned so much from him. And this time around, it wasn't any different. I mean, watching the way that he approached the role, watching the way that he and Bruce worked together, watching what they took from each other and how they played it, I feel so lucky. I get like the best seat in the house, and I just get to go to film school basically when I'm making these movies, watching these people.
It's a treat to get to work with a true friend, and Brian and I, you know, it was 2003 that we shot Brick. It didn't come out till 2006. That's what happens when you have these tiny little movies, but that's almost 10 years ago, and we've really been friends since. The friendship never stopped after that, and we've done lots of even little things together before we started working on Looper. You know, make little videos or songs, or just, you know, all the time. And I remember when Ryan started telling me about this idea. It was not even all that long after we finished Brick. That's years we've been talking about this idea. And, you know, the standard for an actor in a movie is you get the script a few months before you start shooting. Which is just a different process, and I'm not trying to say either one's better or worse, but it is out of the ordinary and really special to get to have this much investment in the material and such a personal connection with the director.
Question over here and then over there.
Hello. I'm Becky Zhou from Epoch Times newspaper, and my question is for Bruce. And a Chinese actress also played your wife in this film. So could you talk about how you feel about working with her, and your impression, and how did you act, and your experience with her? Thank you.
I had a really good experience working with Summer. It didn't feel like, it just felt like we were in love. Just felt like romance. And the fact that she might not have understood what I was saying, or I might not have understood what she was saying, didn't ever feel like it was a problem or was an issue. That it was romantic. And I think if you could read this script, because I think you should all get a copy of the script, because a film is just pictures, it's just images of emotion, of me and Joe and how we interact emotionally, and how Summer and I interact emotionally, and how you and Emily Blunt interacted. It's all emotion. But if you read it, it's such a great document. It's such a great story. And it should just be a rule that you have to hand it out. Because it's such a good story, and it just reads really fast. And I read it, and I called up the guys that get me work, and I said I would like to be in this film right away, and didn't have to think about it, didn't question it, and didn't question any of it. I was just happy to be there.
This will be the last question.
That's a lot of pressure.
So much
It's a lot of
pressure.
pressure. This better be a good.
There are over 400 or almost 400 films here. A lot of them don't have distribution and may never be screened anywhere else in the world. Can we expect either of you to sit in an audience and take in any of these films? And if so, if you're brave enough, does that mean you go incognito, dress up? I don't know. I saw Ewan McGregor sitting beside me at a movie last year, and I thought, wow. Most people didn't even notice because they were looking on stage, but.
That's good. Yeah, I like movies. I go to the movies all the time. I have a little baby, that is not that old, so I'd rather see her than anything else right now. But I'm gonna see Looper tonight. I don't know if I'm gonna see any other movies here at the Toronto International Film Festival.
It's one of the curses of going to a film festival and with a film is you don't get to see movies. You just, what I do, I just ask all the journalists what's good and make notes, and then luckily we live in LA, so when the stuff comes back there, I get out to see it. But it's one of the things you hear about all these great stuff, and you're, doing interviews all day.
Yeah. Joe, your plans?
We're talking about trying to go see The Master, the P.T. Anderson movie, and then, I'm sure we'll be able to go and just watch a movie. I think that this is this is a festival that's full of cinephiles, and to me, this is my third time I think at the Toronto Film Festival, and it doesn't have the air of glitz and glamour as much, and I really like that about it. It's more about the films, and I doubt I'll get treated, in any sort of weird manner. I think I'll probably just go watch a movie and have a great time.
Please do.
I want to see that. If I were going to, I wouldn't tell you about it.
Okay, Looper hits theaters September 28th, and tonight it will screen at the Visa Screening Room at the Elgin Theater at 6:30, and it is the festival gala presentation at Roy Thompson Hall at 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for being here.
Man.
Thanks all.
Thank
for
you
coming.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.